They call me the Rose Lady, but that's because I've always loved roses. It's my favorite flower. And so when I started taking China lessons, I think the wild rose was the first thing they taught us to do. But I liked the double rose. So I started in doing the double rose. But the old way that everybody else was painting them, they went around the rose instead of going up the way the rose grows. To me, they grow with the petals going up instead of wrapping around the bowl. So I sat home and took my roses apart. I looked at them in every angle and discovered that the petals really have a texture going up and down the same as your materials have. The thread going up, it goes crosswise. So if the petals goes up, that's the way I started to paint the rose. Now I started with the oil and the color on my brush, and I used a long stroller brush. I discovered too that a rose is more or less of a circle. And if you went around the whole thing, I'll just roughly sketch this in. It makes a circle with two circles inside. And here is the heart of the rose. This is the bowl. This is where your petals lay. First, your petals go up naturally. They fit around that rose. So they have to come up. And this is the position that I painted my roses. So that's the bowl. This in here is the heart. Then this is the petals that's dropped down. This petal, naturally, this is the base of the rose. Your stem would come out just about underneath where this is, so it would be back in there. So these petals were originally up here in this distance. So they're the ones that drop down here. And they will generally drop down 3 at a time. So paint first one in. So there you got the outline of your rose. If I make this a little more solid, then you can see what it is. So that is the proportion of your roses. You're looking at the whole rose. Then you study that in angles, whether you're looking. This is about a 3/4 view. If I was going to make it half view, then I wouldn't see these petals, but I might see more of these. So that's the way you judge from the way you see your petals. It was always a puzzle to know. People would say, where do you start painting a rose? Well, this is the way I chose to do this one. You start in the heart of the rose first. And because these are petals out here that are more or less going around and form around this, they're the ones that haven't dropped clear down yet. So you just lightly fill that in. And then you fill this all in. You go around this side. This side is lighter. We're going to have the light coming. I like to fill it all in, but always in that upward stroke. And I'll probably do this a little stronger in the center so as you can see it. Cross from the center and put my petal in. Now this would be my natural shadow that would fall from the rounded bowl. Then you pull this out. This is a petal. Now you don't want this that strong, so you pull it out. I don't cut out any petals in mine until I get a little background around it, because then I have something to blend my petals to. Naturally in your background you always have your colors of your sky, your sunlight, and the foliage that is around the flower. I picked up a blue here, very pale blue, and this is going to be my sky. I actually pull a little bit of the pink over into the sky. Now I picked my lightest color For my green, first, if I'm going to have a spray of green flowers down here, I'll pick either my chartreuse or use the chartreuse and mix it with a little blue so to give a little different color. And I barely touch the edge of that flower. This could be background foliage, which we generally have a lot of it on a rose bush. You would get more detail than if you were out in your yard and painting flowers on their bushes. Then you get farm and you get your three values, your light, medium, and dark. But if you're painting something that's sitting closer to you, you're going to see more detail. And that's the way I generally paint my flowers, because I generally paint from flowers that I have sitting in a vase. On your first flower, you're just merely putting all your background colors, and I try to do as much as I can to my flower without having it look stiff and awkward. But I want to be sure to see what I've got when I go back on the flower. Then I put all the detail on and in the background. I don't actually paint the leaf in its form of just what I want to. I'm just putting color that would be on those leaves. And even that is not all the color because you wipe them out. I generally start up at the top of the flower. Get it here. Cut these petals up. This is just an easy way I found of painting a rose, so I always gave these instructions. You've got the circle divided into three. This space to this space, from here to here to here. So from here up, these, I don't want to go way out here because that petal isn't going to grow up that way. Your petals up here do not get that long. They'd have to be the length from there clear to here. Really about right in there. So you keep your rose in proportion. I like to use the cut with my brush just to give me a general outline. Then you can come in with your silk and cut with the silk over your finger if you want. But you see, I'm beginning to farm these petals up here now. And then the next one down would be more or less in between, and pull with a soft stroke down to the center. Now these are the petals that went up the rose. They did not wrap from this side to around here. There is at least 3 petals you're going to show right in there. So you couldn't wrap it around. They grow up. So I'm going to cut across here. And that's my first petal up. I cut across here. And the other could come in here. They're never exactly alike, so your rose you don't want to ever paint your rose so every rose has the petals in the same spot. Turn your rose around when you're looking at it to paint it, so that you can use one rose but get many different positions. Now here again, as your petals drop down, they begin to curl under. They're going down under. And that's why we get a lot of petals. A lot of roses will have pointed petals. It's because as they have pulled away from the ball of the rose, they have rolled under. And they have to crack in the end. You can't take a circle and turn it over without having it split. So that's where you get the little cracks sometimes in your petals, because the petals have rolled over. Now this is my first one down. And I'm going to pull this green over under this a little more. And I'm going to cut this like this, and like this. Now if you want to make it look rolled, then get out on the point of that petal and pull it gently toward the bowl of the rose. Leave a little color in here. That gives you that slight shadow. And then this side one comes in here, and you pull this in. I'm going to use my silk because I think it'll show you how I see it a little plainer. You make your first cut with the silk, and then go back and soften it. Now these petals come down from the top. They're only showing halfway. Now, take your brush, and as you pull this gently, you've rolled that petal. This one over here, and you roll this one back, and it rolls into it. Now this one up here, I'm going to put a little more green on there because I can see, as I'm working with it, what I want my petal to do. And make it much easier for me to see on the next fire. Now, you have a little petal coming in here, and it too will roll. Now we're going over onto this side. And by rolling it very slightly, gives you the roll to your petal. It's really fun doing a rose because every stroke you do, it tells you something, and you can change it, you can make it look a little different way. Now, right now, I see where I want to put a little more shadow under here. And if I do these things on first fire, it's easier to keep track of what you're doing. Now, that's about all I would do on my first fire to the rose. Then I would go ahead and I put color all over my piece of china, whatever I'm doing, but always in the color that I'm going to use. And I would place, of course, my other roses in here too. And do as much as you can on the rose to set it up, because if you just had a blank place of china there, but with color, then you've got to do on the second fire what I've done on first.